Stephanie White is done watching Caitlin Clark get dragged into every WNBA controversy like some media chew toy. In a scathing new interview, the Indiana Fever coach laid it out clearly. Clark is being used. And not just by the media, not just by fans, by the league itself. From contract negotiations to TV debates, Clark's name is being tossed around as a bargaining chip, while her actual voice stays out of the conversation. Kathy Engelbert's leadership, once simply questioned, is now being dismantled piece by people inside the system. White's comments joined a growing chorus calling out how the WNBA's top brass is failing to adapt. According to her, they're clinging to outdated strategies that treat players like assets, not humans. And in the middle of it all, Caitlin Clark, 23 years old, quietly getting reduced to a narrative puppet. What makes White's stance different is the shift in tone. She didn't rage. She didn't rant. She just pulled the curtain back. The league wants growth, attention, and respect, but it's constantly sabotaging itself by letting its most valuable people, players and coaches, get devalued for short-term optics. Clark's sudden transformation from rising icon to political flashpoint didn't happen by accident. It happened because the league let it. White's real point wasn't just about Clark. It was about a culture problem. The kind where transparency is replaced by spin, and problems are ignored unless they're trending. Where even someone like Caitlin Clark, who's done nothing but perform, can become a lightning rod because the leadership can't manage its own direction. The subtext of White's interview was loud. Respect needs to start showing up in actual decisions, not just press releases. Because if coaches are this frustrated publicly, you can only imagine what's being said behind closed doors. And if stars like Clark keep being treated like brand extensions instead of people, the damage might go beyond just one player. It could unravel the entire league credibility. Stephanie White didn't play it safe. She didn't dodge the hard questions or hide behind generic coach speak. She came out swinging, with clarity, with calmness, and with the kind of honesty that this league rarely hears from the inside. And the WNBA needed to hear it. In her recent interview, White made one thing abundantly clear. Caitlin Clark is being used. Not protected, not supported. Used. Used as a ratings magnet. Used as a political symbol. Used as a target whenever the league, the media, or even other players need a scapegoat. And the most damning part? Clark isn't even involved in most of the conversations she's being dragged into. That's what pushed Stephanie White to speak up, because she's been watching this unfold up close from the sidelines, in the locker room, in press conferences, and what she sees is a young star being exploited by a system that's more interested in image control than actual leadership. Caitlin Clark, just 23 years old, is at the center of every major WNBA debate. Salaries, officiating, favoritism, rookie treatment, and even race. And yet, she hasn't made a single divisive statement. She hasn't stirred any controversy. She's kept her head down and focused on basketball. But none of that matters, because the league keeps placing her front and center in every storm, whether she wants to be there or not. White's frustration is rooted in the disconnect between the league's public image and its internal reality. On the surface, the WNBA presents itself as unified, progressive, and player-first. But behind the scenes, it's disorganized, politically divided, and driven by superficial gains. The leadership is more reactive than responsive, more invested in PR than in player well-being. And Stephanie White called it out. She specifically highlighted how Clark's rapid rise has exposed cracks in the league's foundation. Clark brought a new wave of fans, attention, and money, but the league wasn't ready. They didn't have the leadership infrastructure to protect her, to manage the pressure, or to maintain fairness within the league. So instead of addressing their own shortcomings, they let the storm hit Clark. And the backlash has been brutal. From players taking public shots to fans pushing polarizing narratives, Clark has been positioned as both hero and villain, without ever asking for either title. And yet, the league remains silent. No meaningful statements from leadership. No clear support systems. No effort to control the toxic narratives that now orbit one of their most important players. That's why White spoke up, because silence from the top is what created this mess. And continuing to let Clark become the face of the league's internal dysfunction is both irresponsible and short-sighted. But White didn't stop with defending Clark. She turned the mirror on the WNBA itself. She called out the culture of mismanagement, the outdated decision-making, the refusal to engage honestly with coaches and players. She challenged Kathy Engelbert and league officials for being out of touch with what's actually happening on the court and in the locker rooms. And most important point she made, this isn't just about one player. It's about how the league treats all of them. Because if Caitlin Clark can be used like this, elevated when it's convenient, abandoned when it's controversial, then anyone can. That's the danger White is warning about. A culture that sees players as assets, not people. A system that prioritizes headlines over humanity. White didn't frame this as a league collapse, but she was clear that the WNBA is in a moment of crisis. Not because it's failing, but because it's growing without evolving. The league is attracting more attention than ever, but it hasn't built the internal strength to handle that attention responsibly. She compared this moment to the early struggles of the NBA and NFL, when rapid growth exposed weak leadership and unclear direction. Those leagues made mistakes, but they adapted. They changed. The question now is whether the WNBA will do the same, or whether it'll keep sacrificing players to protect broken systems. The irony is brutal. Clark should be the league's greatest success story. She's brought in new audiences, broken viewership records, and delivered elite performances under immense pressure. But instead of being celebrated purely for her game, she's being politicized, criticized, and thrown into the center of every fight she didn't start. And the longer the league lets that continue, the more damage it does to her, to fans, and to the league's credibility. White also addressed the damage to fans. People came to the WNBA because of the basketball, but what they're getting now is drama, infighting, and silence from leadership. That disconnect is costing the league trust, and trust is everything in sports. If fans start to believe the league doesn't protect its players, doesn't foster a healthy culture, and doesn't speak up when things go wrong, they'll walk. Especially the newer fans who came in because of Clark. They're not here for politics. They're here for performance. And when they see that performance being punished, not protected, they'll move on. And White knows that's the risk. That's why she's pushing for real leadership. Not PR campaigns. Not empty statements. Actual change. Leadership that listens to coaches. Leadership that values players as humans. Leadership that protects its stars, supports its locker rooms, and leads with transparency, not spin. Because right now, that leadership is nowhere to be found. Stephanie White didn't need to say it directly, but the message was clear. The WNBA has to decide what kind of league it wants to be. Does it want to be a serious, professional, athlete-first league that adapts and grows responsibly? Or does it want to become a cautionary tale? A league that chased fame without the foundation to sustain it? Clark isn't the problem. The players aren't the problem. The fans aren't the problem. Leadership is. And until that changes, all the growth, all the momentum, all the attention, it's fragile. Because no amount of ratings will save a league that can't take care of its own. So what do you think? Was Stephanie White right to put the league on notice? Should the WNBA be doing more to protect Caitlin Clark and its players from exploitation and backlash? And what needs to change at the leadership level to prevent this from happening again? Let's talk in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more real talk about the power struggles, politics, and pressure points shaping today's sports world. Because what's happening in the WNBA right now, it's not just a media story. It's a leadership test. And time's running out. You know things are bad when the head coach becomes the league's moral compass. Stephanie White didn't hold a press conference. She didn't storm out of a post-game interview. She didn't drop some cryptic social media post. She sat down and told the truth, the kind of truth that makes executives squirm and fans lean in. And now, the WNBA can't pretend it didn't hear her. Because what White exposed wasn't just about Caitlin Clark. It was about an entire system that's been pretending everything's fine while the cracks get wider by the day. It was about leadership that smiles for the cameras and vanishes when it's time to stand up for its players. And it was about a league that claims to be about empowerment, yet uses its brightest stars like pawns in a corporate strategy game. Let's be honest here. Clark has been used since the second she touched a WNBA court. She didn't walk in as just another rookie. She walked in carrying the weight of the league's future. The marketing? All about her. The media blitz? Focus squarely on her. The broadcast deals, the sponsorship surges, the new fans showing up to arenas, they all orbit one person. And yet, when the backlash hit, when veteran players started throwing shade, when media outlets tried to stir controversy, when the pressure turned personal, where was the protection? Where was the support? Nowhere. The league let it happen. They let narratives fly unchecked. They let Clark get framed as the problem when she was the most consistent, committed piece of the entire puzzle. And Stephanie White? She saw it all firsthand. She saw her player getting dissected for things she never said, caught in battles she never started, blamed for a system that was broken long before she arrived. So White did what leaders do. She told the truth. She pulled back the curtain and revealed what a lot of people around the WNBA have been whispering for months, that the league is lost at the top, that the people running it are more concerned with optics than outcomes, that they'll smile at players during pre-game ceremonies, but won't lift a finger when those same players are targeted and worn down. Her words were calm, but the impact was seismic, because she wasn't speaking as an outsider or an analyst trying to stir the pot. She was speaking as someone inside the system, someone who's supposed to trust that the people above her are steering the ship responsibly. Instead, she sees chaos, and she's done pretending it's all fine. White also drew a clear line between what growth looks like and what exploitation looks like. Yes, Clark is bringing in ratings. Yes, she's helping grow the brand. But that doesn't mean she should be the sacrificial lamb every time things get tense. You can't put someone's face on every billboard, push them in every promo, and then act like they're just another player when things go south. That's not leadership. That's manipulation. And it's not just Clark who's feeling the effects. Other players are frustrated too. Frustrated that leadership only steps in when it's time to collect a check or post a highlight. Coaches are frustrated. Fans are frustrated. Even media outlets are starting to turn, asking real questions instead of just playing along. That's what happens when you build momentum with no structure to support it. The WNBA is experiencing what White accurately described as growing pains. But these aren't the kind of pains that come from success. These are the ones that come from misalignment, when what the league says it values doesn't match how it behaves. If you say you support women in sports, then support them. Not just when they're smiling in ads or hitting buzzer beaters. Support them when they're being criticized unfairly. Support them when their mental health is at risk. Support them when the weight of the league is on their shoulders and they're not even being paid what they're worth. White's critique hit hardest because she didn't just call out individual failures. She exposed a systemic issue, a culture that is reactive instead of proactive, a leadership team that views transparency as optional, and a league that wants to be taken seriously on the global stage but still operates like it's afraid of conflict. She's calling for a cultural reset, not just policy tweaks, not just damage control, an actual shift in how the league views its players. A move away from treating them like brand ambassadors and towards seeing them as the heart of the league. Because they are. And it's not just about fairness. It's about survival. Because if this continues, if more players feel used, abandoned, or silenced, they're going to walk. Or worse, they'll stop trusting the league entirely. And once that trust is gone, good luck getting it back. White also touched on something few people have the courage to say out loud. Fans are watching all of this, and it matters. They're not just watching the games. They're watching how the league treats its players. They're watching the narratives being pushed. They're watching who gets protected and who gets ignored. And if they start to sense that the league doesn't stand for the values it preaches, they won't stick around. That's the risk the WNBA is facing right now. Not just losing players, but losing belief. This could be the most important turning point in the league's history. The exposure is there. The talent is there. The momentum is real. But without a leadership team that knows how to handle that momentum, it'll all collapse. And if you're thinking this is just drama that'll blow over, think again. This isn't a one-time quote. This isn't some throwaway comment from a frustrated coach. Stephanie White's interview is being passed around locker rooms, boardrooms, and media circles because it hit a nerve, because it reflects how a lot of people feel but haven't had the platform or power to say out loud. Now that it's out there, the league has two choices: confront the truth and evolve, or ignore it and continue spiraling. So where's Cathy Engelbert? Where's the statement? Where's the leadership? Because this isn't just about one coach defending one player. This is about whether or not the WNBA will listen when people inside its own system are waving red flags. And if they won't, then the question becomes, who will be left to trust them when it's too late? Stephanie White shouldn't have to say any of this. It shouldn't take a respected head coach pulling focus from the court to call out what the league's own executives should have addressed months ago. But here we are, again, with players and coaches doing the leadership's job while the top brass hides behind marketing campaigns and buzzwords. What White did wasn't rebellious. It was responsible. It was the kind of thing you'd expect from people in charge. The problem is the people in charge are too busy chasing visibility to realize they're losing credibility. Every time a figure like White speaks up, it exposes just how empty the league's leadership has become. It's like pulling back the curtain and seeing there's no wizard, just a boardroom of executives too scared to say the obvious. The way they're handling this moment in time is broken. And yes, Caitlin Clark is in the center of all this. But she's not the root of the conflict. She's the symptom. What White put into words is what so many fans, players, and insiders have been trying to decode for weeks. Clark is being weaponized. Her name has become shorthand for every hot-button debate in the league. Salary disparities? Bring up Clark. Ref favoritism? Clark again. Media bias, locker room tension, fan arguments, even CBA negotiations. Somehow, it all gets routed through Caitlin Clark, as if she's the mastermind behind every systemic issue in the WNBA. That's not just lazy, it's dangerous. And White knows it. That's why she stepped in. Not to defend Clark from criticism on the court, but from unfair responsibility off it. Because what we're seeing isn't criticism, it's deflection. A league that doesn't want to confront its own structural problems has found it easier to let its newest star absorb the blow. You want to talk about leadership failure? Start there. The WNBA has built its recent wave of success on the back of Clark's popularity. Record-breaking ratings, sellout arenas, skyrocketing merchandise sales. And yet, in the moments when she needs the most support, when things get ugly, political, or personal, the league disappears. Again and again. Stephanie White saw that and refused to play along. She put her own reputation on the line to say what needed to be said. Stop using Caitlin as a shield for your own dysfunction. And here's where it gets even more serious. This isn't just about protecting Clark's image. It's about protecting the integrity of the league itself. Because when players and coaches see how the system treats someone like Clark, what message does that send to everyone else? If she's being used this blatantly, without protection, without public defense, without any acknowledgement of how damaging it is, what chance does anyone else have? This is about culture, about precedent, about whether the WNBA is serious about being more than a trending topic on social media. Because right now, it's not looking good. Let's talk about Cathy Engelbert for a second. As commissioner, her job is to lead through conflict, not avoid it. But she hasn't responded to White's comments. Not publicly, not meaningfully. And that silence is becoming the most consistent theme of her tenure. This isn't a personal attack. This is about performance. Engelbert has had opportunity after opportunity to step up and set a tone, especially in moments of controversy. But what do we get? Generic statements, PR distractions, delayed reactions, or more often than not, nothing. That vacuum at the top forces coaches like White to fill the void. And while it's admirable, it's also unsustainable. Coaches should be strategizing, mentoring, and developing talent, not acting as the league's conscience. White's calm delivery made her message even more brutal. She didn't yell. She didn't vent. She just laid it all out, point by point, failure by failure. And she made it clear that the league's current trajectory isn't just flawed. It's unsustainable. She called it what it is, growing pains. But growing pains don't mean denial. They mean adaptation. They mean leadership willing to look at mistakes and fix them, not spin them. And the fact that we're not seeing that, that's the most dangerous sign of all. Because if you don't grow from your growing pains, you collapse under them. Let's not forget, White also connected the dots between the WNBA and other major leagues. She referenced how the NBA and NFL both went through their own early-stage chaos. Infighting, PR disasters, power struggles. But they had leaders who learned. They had commissioners who didn't let the media or the boardroom dictate every move. They built systems that could withstand pressure. That's the blueprint the WNBA should be following. But instead, we're watching a league that's using its most valuable players as stopgaps for its own dysfunction. And at the center of that dysfunction, a lack of trust. White's comments weren't just a call for fairness. They were a call for authenticity, for leadership that listens, for a system that stops pretending it's fine and starts acting like it wants to be better. She asked for transparency, for real conversations, for decisions based on the well-being of players, not just the bankability of their image. Because if the league doesn't learn how to do that now, when the spotlight is brightest, it'll lose the very people who built the momentum in the first place. Let's be clear, Stephanie White isn't trying to burn the league down. She's trying to save it. And whether you're a coach, a fan, a player, or someone in the media, her message should hit home. This league has too much talent, too much opportunity, and too much visibility to let outdated leadership and internal politics derail it. But if those in charge don't start listening to people like White, that's exactly what's going to happen. So the question isn't whether Stephanie White was right. The question is, what will the league do now that the truth is out in the open? Because the time for hiding is over. The time for carefully worded statements is over. The time for letting star players carry the weight of leadership failures is way past over. This is a crossroads moment for the WNBA. Evolve, or repeat the same cycle until it breaks completely. What do you think? Should league officials address Stephanie White's comments publicly? Are we seeing the start of a true cultural shift, or just another flashpoint that'll be ignored until the next controversy? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want more deep dives into the real stories behind the headlines, subscribe. Because this isn't going away, and neither is the truth.